My son-in-law made me sign a caretaker agreement, then charged me rent in my own house. You know you raised your kids right until they marry somebody who turns your whole life upside down. My name's Miss Loretta Mae Johnson. I'm 64 years old, and I live in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I worked my whole life, paid off my mortgage, and thought I could rest easy in my golden years, until I let my daughter and her husband move in. Turns out, trusting the wrong people don't just break your heart, it can cost you your home. If this story resonated with your soul, hit the subscribe button and let me know where you're watching from in the comments, which country you're listening from. The sun was dipping low over Baton Rouge, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, when I heard the familiar creak of my front porch steps. I was in my living room, flipping through an old photo album, smiling at pictures of Tasha when she was just a little thing with pigtails and a gap-toothed grin. Those were simpler times, back when it was just me and her against the world. I closed the album as the doorbell chimed, a sound that always felt a little too formal for my cozy, one-story home on Magnolia Street. "Ma, it's us," Tasha's voice called through the door, bright, but with an edge I couldn't quite place. I opened it to find her standing there, her braids pulled back tight, her eyes tired but hopeful. Beside her was Marcus, her husband of 3 years, his smile wide and polished, like a car salesman trying to close a deal. I hugged Tasha tight, her warmth reminding me of all the years I'd carried her through life's storms. Marcus got a nod, polite, but I wasn't one for his brand of charm. "Come on in, baby," I said, stepping aside. "Y'all hungry? I got some gumbo on the stove." Tasha hesitated, glancing at Marcus before she spoke. "Ma, we need to talk about something important." My heart did a little dip, like it knew trouble was coming before my head caught up. I led them to the dining room, where the table was still set with the good plates from Sunday dinner. We sat, and Tasha's hands fidgeted with the edge of the tablecloth, a habit she'd had since she was a girl. "Ma, I got laid off," she said, her voice low, like she was ashamed to admit it. "The call center shut down, and, well, we're struggling. Rent's too high, and Marcus's gig at the auto shop ain't steady." I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Baby, you know I got you, always have, always will." Marcus leaned forward, his elbows on my table like he owned it. "Ms. Loretta, we were thinking, maybe we could stay here for a bit, just till we get back on our feet, few months, tops." I looked at him, searching for something in those smooth-talking eyes of his. Marcus was handsome, I'd give him that. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a voice that could make a lie sound like scripture. But I'd raised Tasha to stand tall, to work hard like I had, scrubbing floors and balancing books to pay off this house. My gut told me Marcus wasn't cut from the same cloth, but Tasha loved him, and I loved Tasha. "Course y'all can stay," I said, smiling at my daughter. "This is your home too." Tasha's face lit up, and she threw her arms around me. "Thank you, Ma. I promise it won't be long." Marcus just nodded, his smile curling a little too sharp for my liking. "Appreciate you, Ms. Loretta. We'll make it right." The first week was fine. Tasha helped with dishes, and we'd sit on the porch at night, sipping sweet tea and laughing about old times. Marcus, though, he was always moving, always tinkering. One morning, I came downstairs to find him in my kitchen, a toolbox open on the counter, the faucet in pieces. "What's all this, Marcus?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. He didn't look up, just kept twisting a wrench. "Faucet was leaking, Ms. Loretta. Figured I'd fix it. Man of the house gotta keep things tight, right?" I bristled at that. Man of the house? This was my house, paid for with 30 years of sweat and sacrifice. But I bit my tongue, nodding. "Just let me know next time, all right? I like to know what's happening in my own home." He flashed that smile again, all teeth. "You got it, Ms. Loretta." By the second week, the little fixes were piling up. Marcus replaced a light switch in the hallway, painted the guest room without asking, and even started rearranging my shed out back. Tasha swore he was just trying to help, but it felt like he was marking his territory. like a dog circling a tree. I'd catch him watching me sometimes, his eyes lingering like he was sizing me up. It wasn't right, but I couldn't put my finger on why. One evening, I was in the living room, knitting a scarf for Tasha, when Marcus came in with a folder in his hand. Tasha was at the grocery store, and the house was quiet, except for the hum of the old AC unit. He sat across from me, his posture too relaxed, like he was settling in for a long game. "Miss Loretta," he started, his voice smooth as butter. "I've been thinking. Your family, and we're grateful for you letting us stay, but we gotta make sure everything's protected, you know? Legally." I set my knitting down, my hands still. "Protected from what, Marcus?" He opened the folder, pulling out a stack of papers. "This here's a caretaker agreement. It's just a formality, something to make sure we're all on the same page. You know how crazy the world is. Lawsuits, liabilities. This just says we're helping out around the house, keeping things in order." I squinted at the papers, the words swimming together in a sea of legal jargon. Words like indemnity and fiduciary responsibility stared back at me, cold and unfamiliar. I'd never been one for contracts. My word had always been enough. But Marcus's eyes were steady, his voice calm, like he'd rehearsed this. "I ain't no lawyer, Marcus," I said, pushing the papers back. "What's this really about?" He leaned closer, his hands clasped like he was praying. "It's about protecting you, Miss Loretta. Say something happens, God forbid, and someone tries to come after your house. This makes it clear we're just caretakers, not tenants. Keeps everything clean." I looked at him, searching for the lie, but his face was a mask of sincerity. Tasha trusted him, and I trusted her. Maybe I was being too hard on him, seeing shadows where there weren't none. I picked up the pen, my hand hovering over the signature line. "You sure this is just for protection?" I asked, my voice softer than I meant it to be. "Swear on my life," he said, his eyes locking on mine. "Your family, Miss Loretta. I'd never steer you wrong." I signed the papers, my name looping across the page, in the same cursive I'd used since grade school. Marcus smiled, folding the papers back into the folder. "Good call," he said, standing. "This'll keep us all safe." That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slow circles. Something gnawed at me, a quiet unease I couldn't shake. I kept seeing Marcus's smile, the way his eyes didn't quite match it. I told myself I was overthinking, that I was just an old woman worrying too much. But deep down, I knew better. Trusting Marcus felt like handing him the keys to my life, and I wasn't sure I'd ever get them back. The next morning, Tasha was in the kitchen, humming as she fried bacon. I wanted to ask her about the agreement, to see if she knew what Marcus was up to. But her smile stopped me. She looked happy, lighter than she had in weeks. I didn't want to take that from her, not yet. "Ma, you okay?" she asked, sliding a plate in front of me. I forced a smile. "Just thinking, baby. You know how I get." She laughed, brushing it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting under my feet, like the ground was giving way. Marcus walked in then, his phone in hand, typing something with that same sharp smile. He didn't say nothing, just grabbed a piece of bacon and headed out to the shed again. By the end of the month, the house didn't feel like mine anymore. Marcus was everywhere, his tools in my garage, his boots by my door, his voice calling the shots. Tasha didn't see it, or maybe she didn't want to, but I saw it clear as day. Marcus wasn't just staying in my house, he was taking it over, piece by piece. And that caretaker agreement was the first step in a plan I couldn't yet see. All I knew was that I'd signed something I didn't understand, and the weight of that choice was starting to press down hard. Have you ever helped someone out and they turned around and bit the hand that fed them? Share your experience in the comments. I want to know I'm not the only one. The air in my Baton Rouge home felt heavier each day, like a storm was gathering inside my walls. Marcus's presence was everywhere, his toolbox sprawled across my garage, his boots muddying my porch, his voice cutting through the quiet like a blade. I'd catch Tasha's eye sometimes, hoping she'd see what I saw, but she'd just smile, tired and distant, and turn away. That caretaker agreement I'd signed gnawed at me, its pages locked in Marcus's folder, out of reach. I didn't know what I'd given him, but the unease in my chest told me it was more than I'd meant to. One muggy afternoon, I was shelling peas on the back porch when Marcus strode out, his phone in one hand, a coffee mug, my favorite, the one with Tasha's baby handprint, dangling carelessly in the other. He sat across from me, legs spread wide like he owned the place. "Miss Loretta," he said, his tone sharp enough to cut through the humidity. "We need to talk money." I stopped shelling, my fingers still around a pod. "Money? What you mean, Marcus?" He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "This house ain't cheap to run. Electric, water, gas. It adds up. Me and Tasha, we're doing our part, fixing things, keeping it tight. But you gotta chip in now, call it rent." I stared at him, the word rent landing like a slap. Rent? In my own house? Boy, I paid this mortgage off before you was born. His eyes didn't waver, cold and steady. "Technically, Ms. Loretta, you're a tenant now. That agreement you signed, it's got a lease clause. This house is under our care, and we need help with the bills." My heart thudded, loud enough I swore he could hear it. "A tenant? Marcus, this is my home. I let y'all stay here out of love for my daughter." He shrugged, like we were discussing the weather. "Love don't pay bills. $500 a month, starting next week. Fair's fair." I looked past him, through the screen door, hoping Tasha was near, but the kitchen was empty. My daughter, my heart, was nowhere in this fight. I stood, peas spilling to the floor, and walked inside without another word. My hands shook as I climbed the stairs to my room, the weight of his words sinking in. A tenant in my own house. That night, I waited for Tasha to come home from her new job at the diner. When she walked in, smelling of grease and coffee, I pulled her to the couch. "Baby, what's Marcus talking about? Calling me a tenant? You know about this?" Her eyes darted to the floor, her fingers twisting the hem of her shirt. "Ma, I don't know. He handles the paperwork. He says it's just legal stuff to keep things right." "Legal stuff?" My voice rose, sharper than I meant. "Tasha, he's charging me rent in my own house. You okay with that?" She wouldn't meet my eyes. "I don't want to fight, Ma. He's trying to help us. Just talk to him, okay?" I watched her retreat to their room, the door clicking shut like a wall between us. My daughter, the girl I'd raised to stand tall, was slipping away, and I didn't know why. The next morning, I woke to find the guest room door locked. My guest room, where Tasha and Marcus slept, now had a shiny new deadbolt I'd never seen. I knocked hard, but no one answered. Downstairs, Marcus was in the kitchen, sipping coffee from my mug again. "What's with the lock, Marcus?" I asked, my voice steady despite the fire in my chest. He didn't look up from his phone. "That's our space now, Ms. Loretta. Need some privacy, you know?" Privacy. In my house. I turned away, my hands clenched, and noticed a small black camera tucked in the corner of the living room, its red light blinking like an unblinking eye. My skin prickled. "When did that go up?" "Yesterday," he said, casual as anything. "Gotta keep the place secure. You're welcome." Secure from what? From me? I wanted to scream, to tear the camera down, but I held back. Something told me Marcus was playing a game I didn't yet understand, and I needed to be smart. Over the next week, the house I'd built with love and labor became a maze of restrictions. Marcus changed the thermostat, locking it behind a plastic cover, leaving me sweating in my own home. He'd bark if I touched it, saying, "We're keeping costs down, Ms. Loretta." My front door had a new keypad lock, and he hadn't given me the code. I had to knock to get into my own house after my morning walks. And Tasha, she stayed quiet, her eyes down, like she was afraid to choose a side. One night, I stood in my kitchen, staring at the stove I'd cooked 1,000 meals on. I reached for a burner, craving cornbread, but Marcus appeared, leaning in the doorway. "You need something, Ms. Loretta. We're trying to keep the electric bill low." I turned, my voice low but firm. "I built this home, Marcus, scrubbed every inch, paid every bill. Now I gotta ask permission to use my own stove. He didn't flinch. Things change. You signed the agreement. This is how it is now. I lay awake that night, my mind racing. I'd signed something I didn't understand, and now my home was slipping through my fingers. I needed answers. The next morning, I drove to Mr. Thibodeau, a lawyer I'd known since church choir days. His office smelled of old books and lemon polish, a small comfort as I handed him a copy of the agreement I'd managed to sneak from Marcus's folder. He adjusted his glasses, his face growing grim as he read. "Loretta, this ain't good," he said, his voice heavy. "This caretaker agreement has a clause, buried deep, mind you, that transfers temporary property rights to Marcus and Tasha. It's worded tricky, but it says they're the primary caretakers, with authority over the house's use. You're listed as a dependent occupant." "Dependent?" I whispered, the word bitter on my tongue. "This is my house." "I know," he said, his eyes soft with pity. "But legally, you gave them control. Not permanent, but enough to make trouble. You'd need a court to fight this, and that takes time and money." I drove home, my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles ached. Marcus had played me, used my trust against me, and Tasha, my own daughter, was letting it happen. I walked into the house, the camera's red light winking at me, and found Marcus in the living room, lounging on my couch like a king. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. He looked up, his smile sharp. "What's there to talk about, Miss Loretta? You signed the papers. This is our house now, at least until we say otherwise." I stood tall, my heart pounding. "This ain't over, Marcus. You may have your papers, but this is my home. I'll fight for it." His laugh was cold, cutting. "Fight with what? You got no money, no lawyer who'll take this cheap. Face it, you're out of moves." I turned away, my mind racing. He was wrong. I wasn't out of moves, not yet. I'd built this life from nothing, raised Tasha alone, paid off this house with my own hands. Marcus thought he'd won, but he didn't know me, not really. I'd find a way to take back what was mine, even if it meant tearing down everything he'd built in my home. The fight was just beginning, and I was ready. My heart was still racing from Marcus's cold laughter, his words echoing in my mind like a taunt. "You're out of moves." He thought he'd cornered me, locked me out of my own home with his cameras and deadbolts. His so-called caretaker agreement, turning my life's work into his playground. But he didn't know the fire in me, the same fire that had carried me through years of single motherhood, scraping by to pay off this house on Magnolia Street. I stood in my bedroom, the only space in my Baton Rouge home that still felt like mine, and whispered to myself, "This ain't over, Marcus, not by a long shot." I needed help, someone who could see through the legal fog Marcus had spun. My mind went to Mr. Delroy, a former neighbor who'd moved across town, but still came to church suppers now and then. He worked in property law, had a sharp mind, and a sharper tongue when it came to nonsense. I found his number in an old address book, my fingers trembling as I dialed. "Loretta Mae Johnson," Delroy's warm voice answered, like no time had passed. "What's got you calling me on a Tuesday morning?" "Delroy, I'm in trouble," I said, keeping my voice low, glancing at the door. "My son-in-law's got me signing papers I don't understand, and now he's calling me a tenant in my own house. Can you help?" "Bring me the papers," he said, no hesitation. "I'll take a look." I met Delroy at his office that afternoon, a cramped room above a bakery that smelled of yeast and coffee. I handed him the caretaker agreement, my hands steady, but my chest tight. He adjusted his glasses, his brow furrowing as he read. The silence stretched, broken only by the hum of a fan in the corner. "Loretta," he said finally, his voice low and serious, "this ain't no caretaker agreement. It's a setup. Marcus isn't trying to take care of you. He's lining things up to take your house once you pass." My breath caught, sharp and cold. "What you mean, Delroy?" He tapped the papers, his finger landing on a paragraph buried in fine print. "This clause here, it gives him and Tasha temporary control. Sure, but there's language about succession rights. If you die, Marcus could claim the property as the primary caretaker. And here's the kicker. I checked county records this morning. He took out an insurance policy on this house last month, in his name only. I leaned back, the room spinning. He's betting on me dying. Delroy nodded, his eyes soft but firm. Looks that way. He's playing a long game, Loretta. You need to be careful. Careful. The word felt like a lifeline. I drove home, my mind racing faster than the car. Marcus thought he had me beat, thought I was just an old woman too trusting to fight back. But he'd underestimated me, and that was his mistake. I started watching him closer, noticing the way he'd leave papers on the kitchen counter, assuming I wouldn't touch them. I began copying them when he wasn't looking. Insurance documents, bank statements, even a letter from a lawyer I didn't recognize. I hid the copies in a shoebox under my bed, next to the old photo album of Tasha's childhood. I bought a small recorder too, a cheap thing from the drugstore, and kept it in my apron pocket. Every time Marcus spoke to me, I'd slip my hand in and press record, catching his words like fireflies in a jar. I didn't know what I'd do with them yet, but I knew I needed proof, something to show the world who he really was. One night, I sat Tasha down in the living room, the camera's red light blinking in the corner like a warning. "Baby," I said, my voice soft. "You gotta tell me what's going on with Marcus. This ain't right. Him locking doors, charging me rent. You see it, don't you?" Her eyes flickered, pain and guilt warring in them. "Ma, I don't know what to do. He says it's for our future, for me and him. I don't want to lose him." My heart broke, but I kept my face steady. "You ain't losing me, Tasha, but you gotta choose what's right. This is our home." She nodded, tears brimming, but said nothing more. I knew then I was fighting this alone, at least for now. If your gut ever told you something wasn't right, did you listen? Intuition is powerful, and mine was screaming. Days turned into weeks, and I played a part I never thought I'd play, pretending to accept Marcus's rules. I stopped arguing about the thermostat, the locked doors, the cameras. I smiled when he barked orders, nodded when he called me tenant. It burned me up inside, but I had a plan. I needed him to slip, to say something I could use. One evening, as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows through my kitchen windows, Marcus was in a rare mood, lounging at the dining table with a beer. Tasha, out working a late shift. I was wiping down the counter, the recorder humming quietly in my pocket. "Miss Loretta," he said, his voice loose, almost playful. "You're taking this better than I thought. Most folks would have fought harder." I kept my eyes on the counter, scrubbing a non-existent spot. "Ain't no use fighting what's done, Marcus. You got your papers." He laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "That's right. Old people don't read, you know. You were an easy target." Signed that agreement without a second thought. Made this whole thing smooth as silk. My hand froze, but I kept my voice soft, steady. And some folks talk too much when they feel untouchable. He didn't catch the edge in my words, just took another swig of his beer. "You know, this house is prime real estate. Once we're set, me and Tasha will have it all. You just keep paying that rent. Keep things easy." I turned away, my heart pounding, the recorder catching every word. That night, I played the audio back in my room. Marcus's voice, spilling out like poison. I burned with anger, but also with hope. This was it. The proof I needed. I called Delroy the next morning, my voice low, as I stood on the porch, away from the cameras. "I got something," I told him. "A recording." Marcus admitting he tricked me into signing. And I got copies of his papers, insurance, letters, everything. "Send it all," Delroy said, his voice sharp with urgency. "I know a reporter, Tanya Green, at the local paper. She's been digging into property scams around here. And I'll get this to a friend at the DA's office. We'll build a case, Loretta, but you gotta keep playing along. Don't let him know you're on to him." I nodded, though he couldn't see me. "I can do that." Over the next few days, I sent Delroy everything. Digital copies of the documents, the audio file, even notes on Marcus's habits, like how he'd meet with a man in a suit at the coffee shop down the street. I kept my routine normal, cooking dinner, smiling at Marcus's smug comments, all while my heart raced with the secret I carried. Each night, I'd lock my bedroom door and check the shoebox, making sure my evidence was safe. One afternoon, Tanya Green called me, her voice brisk but kind. "Miss Johnson, I've seen what you sent Delroy. This is big. Marcus might be part of a bigger scheme, targeting elderly homeowners. Can you meet me tomorrow? Bring anything else you find." I agreed, my mind spinning with possibilities. Was Marcus working alone, or was there more to this? The thought chilled me, but it also fueled me. I wasn't just fighting for my house anymore. I was fighting for every person he might hurt next. As I hung up, I heard the front door open, Marcus's heavy footsteps echoing through the house. I slipped the recorder back into my pocket, my resolve hardening. He thought he'd won, thought I was beaten, but I was setting a trap, and soon he'd walk right into it. This was my home, my life, and I'd take it back, one careful step at a time. If your gut ever told you something wasn't right, did you listen? Drop a yes or no in the comments. Because intuition is powerful, the trap I'd set for Marcus was closing in, and I could feel the shift in my bones. Like the air before a Louisiana storm, I kept my routine steady, cooking gumbo, nodding at Marcus's smug remarks, all while slipping copies of his documents and recordings to Delroy. Tanya Green, the reporter, was building a story, and Delroy's friend at the DA's office was moving fast. Each night, I checked my shoebox of evidence, hidden under my bed, and prayed for the strength to see this through. Marcus thought he had me cornered in my own home on Magnolia Street, but I was ready to turn the tables. One humid morning, as I sipped coffee on the porch, 2 police cars pulled up, their lights flashing silently. Marcus was in the kitchen, eating my biscuits, when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find 2 officers, their faces stern but calm, and Tanya Green standing behind them, a notepad in hand. "Miss Loretta Johnson?" one officer asked. "That's me," I said, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. "We're here for Marcus Reed. Charges of fraud and elder abuse. We've got a warrant." I stepped aside, my heart racing with a mix of relief and dread. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his face shifting from confusion to defiance as the officers read him his rights. "This is a mistake," he snapped, his voice sharp. "I ain't done nothing wrong." I held up a hand, my eyes locked on his. "You did plenty, Marcus, and I got it all on tape." His jaw tightened, but the officers didn't give him time to argue. They cuffed him and led him to the car, his protests fading as the door slammed shut. Tanya gave me a nod, her eyes fierce with purpose. "This is just the start, Ms. Loretta. We're digging deeper." Tasha came home from her diner shift an hour later, her eyes wide with shock as I told her what happened. She sank onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. "Mama, I didn't know it would go this far," she sobbed, her voice breaking. "I thought he was just trying to help us." I looked at my daughter, the girl I'd raised to be strong, and felt my heart crack. "You didn't stand up when it mattered, Tasha," I said, my voice soft but firm. "That hurt worse than Marcus ever could." She reached for my hand, but I pulled back, the weight of her silence too heavy. "I love you, baby, but you let him take my home, my peace. I need you to go. Both of you." Her sobs followed her out the door, but I held firm. I'd given too much already, and I needed to reclaim what was mine. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. The insurance company launched an investigation into Marcus's policy, finding it riddled with fraud. Delroy worked with the DA to unravel the caretaker agreement, proving it was signed under false pretenses. By the end of the month, my name was restored to the deed, the ink on the title feeling like a victory carved from years of struggle. Marcus faced charges, and Tanya's article exposed a ring of property scams targeting elders across Baton Rouge. My story was the spark that lit the fire. With Marcus gone and Tasha staying with her cousin, the house felt empty but lighter, like it could breathe again. I walked through each room, touching the walls I'd scrubbed, the floors I'd mopped to pay off this home. It was mine again, but it needed more than my love to heal. It needed purpose. I called Delroy one sunny afternoon, the scent of jasmine drifting through my open windows. "I'm thinking of fixing this place up," I said, "not just for me, but for others. Seniors like me, who need a safe place to call home." Delroy's laugh was warm. "Loretta, you don't quit, do you? I'm in. Let's make it happen." We got to work. Delroy knew contractors who owed him favors, and together we renovated the house. We painted the walls a soft yellow, replaced the old carpet with hardwood, and turned the guest rooms into cozy spaces with new beds and bright curtains. I even had the locks changed, the cameras removed, and the thermostat freed from its plastic cage. The house felt alive again, its spirit restored. By spring, I'd turned the spare rooms into affordable rentals for seniors on fixed incomes. My first tenant was Ms. Evelyn, a retired nurse with a sharp wit and a love for gospel music. Then came Mr. Clarence, a quiet widower who tended my garden like it was his own. They paid what they could, and in return, they brought laughter and stories back to my table. We'd sit on the porch at dusk, sipping sweet tea, sharing tales of our lives. My home wasn't just mine anymore. It was a haven, a place where respect and love lived again. One evening, as I watered my roses, Ms. Evelyn joined me, her cane tapping the porch. "Loretta, this house got its spirit back," she said, her eyes twinkling. "You did that." I smiled, my heart full. "It's only got room for folks who respect it, and me." Tasha called sometimes, her voice heavy with regret. But I wasn't ready to let her back in. Not yet. I'd forgiven her in my heart, but trust was a bridge we'd have to rebuild slow. For now, I was focused on my home, my tenants, and the strength I'd found in fighting for what was mine. As I locked up that night, the stars bright overhead, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. This house, my house, was more than brick and mortar. It was my legacy, my fight, my victory. And I'd make sure it stayed that way, for me and for those who needed it most. Have you ever had to take your power back from someone you trusted? Leave your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more real talk from real folks like me.